Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Surabhyay Namaha. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yad kripatamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam yad kripatamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Srimad Bhagavatam class. Continuing to read from Canto number 4, chapter 20, which is entitled Lord Vishnu's Appearance in the Sacrificial Arena. And today we are reading text number 11. Udasinam iva dyaksham dravya jnana kriyat manam kuta stam imam atmanam yo vedapnoti shobhanam. Udasinam ivadhyaksham dravya jnana kriyatmanam kutastam imam atmanam yo vedapnoti shobhanam. Udasinam ivadhyaksham dravya jnana kriyatmanam kutastam imam atmanam yo vedapnoti shobhanam. Udasinam ivadhyaksham dravya jnana kriyatmanam kutastam imam atmanam yo vedapnoti shobhanam. Udasinam ivadhyaksham dravya jnana kriyatmanam kutastam imam atmanam yo vedapnoti shobhanam. Udasinam, indifferent. Iva, simply. Adhyaksham, the superintendent. Dravya, of the physical elements. Jnana, knowledge. Knowledge acquiring senses. Kriya, working senses. Atmanam, and of the mind. kutastam,
Kutastam.
fixed,
Fixed.
imam, this, atmanam,
Atmanam.
soul,
Soul.
yaha,
Yaha.
anyone who,
Anyone who.
Veda,
Veda.
knows,
Knows.
apnoti,
Apnoti.
gets,
Yes.
shobhanam,
Shobhanam.
all good fortune.
All good fortune.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yes.
Anyone who knows that this material body, made of the 5 gross elements, the sense organs, the working senses, and the mind, is simply supervised by the fixed soul, is eligible to be liberated from material bondage. Kindly repeat after me. Anyone who knows that this material body, made of the 5 gross elements, the sense organs, the working senses, and the mind, is simply supervised by the fixed soul, is eligible to be liberated from material bondage. Purport. This verse describes how one can become liberated from material bondage. So we should all listen very carefully. The first point is that one must know that the soul is different from his body. The soul is called Dehi, or one who possesses the body. And the material body is called Deha, or the embodiment of the soul. The body is changing at every moment, but the soul is fixed. Therefore, the soul is called kutastam. Kutastam means fixed. The change of body is enacted by the reactions of the 3 modes of nature. One who has understood the fixed position of the soul should not be disturbed by the incoming and outgoing interactions of the modes of material nature in the form of happiness and distress. In Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna recommends that since happiness and distress come and go due to the interaction of the modes of nature on the body, one should not be disturbed by such external movements. Even though one is sometimes absorbed in such external movements, he has to learn to tolerate them. The living entity should be always indifferent to the action and reaction of the external body. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that the body, made of the gross physical elements, earth, water, fire, air, and sky, sometimes referred to as ether, and the subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and ego, is completely different from the soul proper. One should therefore not be disturbed by the action and reaction of these 8 gross and subtle material elements. The practical process to attain this stage of indifference is to execute devotional service. Only one who constantly engages in devotional service 24 hours a day, not 16 or 18, but 24, can be indifferent to the action and reaction of the external body. When a man is absorbed in a particular thought, he does not hear or see any external activities, even though they are enacted in his presence. Similarly, those who are fully absorbed in devotional service do not care what is going on with the external body. That status is called samadhi. One who is actually situated in samadhi is understood to be a first-class yogi. Translation again. Anyone who knows that this material body, made of the 5 elements, the 5 gross elements, the sense organs, the working senses, and the mind, is simply supervised by the fixed soul, is eligible to be liberated from material bondage. It's called Bhagavad Gita 101. First lesson. First lessons of Bhagavad Gita. Dehi nosmin yata dehi komaram jovanam jara tata dehantara prap dhiras tatra namuyati. Matra sparshasta konteya shitosna sukha dukada agama paino nityas tam stitikshasva bharata. So this is mentioned here in the purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although not directly quoting these verses, but anyone who has read Bhagavad Gita will understand. These are the preliminary beginning instructions given by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, that we are living in a world of duality, whereby every single moment of the day and night we are experiencing these constant changes that are affecting this body, due mainly to our connection and contact with the modes of material nature. And the only way to actually overcome this situation, of course, it is mentioned here clearly, is to take up wholeheartedly, fully, the process of bhakti, of devotional service, which will help us to completely transcend our material situation. But initially, we cannot immediately do that, so therefore we have to learn to tolerate the very important quality, which is mentioned also by Srila Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion. It is also there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Titikshava karunika suridam sarva dehinam. That a Vaishnava is known by his being able to tolerate all kinds of situations, tolerating especially the various changes that are taking place in his own body or within his own mind. So therefore, this very basic and preliminary knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita is how we begin our process of becoming disentangled. The very verse here is explaining, this verse is explaining how we can become liberated from the entanglement of this material world. And it is based on knowing, this is very nicely explained here, that the spirit soul is fixed. Fixed means it is eternal, eternally situated in its nature of being Satchitananda. Isvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha. In the same way that the Lord, He is described as Satchitananda Vigraha, has the eternal form of knowledge and bliss. That is our position also as the spirit soul. That is the preliminary, basic instruction given by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So therefore, this is the knowledge, this is the basic knowledge that that we have to cultivate. And to the extent that we are serious in understanding this very basic knowledge, then to that extent we can learn to be undisturbed by what is going on within our body, and to also be undisturbed by all of the different changes that are taking place around us. Why is it that people get upset with other people? Because they haven't learned this knowledge. Why is it that devotees also get upset when dealing with other devotees or dealing with non-devotees? Because we haven't learned this basic concept. Although it is very simple information, very simple knowledge, but due to not sufficiently realizing this, we again and again allow ourselves to become influenced or affected by these dualities of the material world. So one who is completely understanding, one who is completely realizing this fact that is being explained here, only such a person, as it is described here, can remain in samadhi. That is the real. So therefore, Prabhupada would explain, samadhi is not simply some, some trance-like. It's like falling in samadhi, sitting at one place and just closing one's eyes and and experiencing samadhi in that way. Samadhi, Prabhupada would explain, is one who is fully absorbed in activities of devotional service and therefore remains unaffected or undisturbed by the ongoings of this material world. And one of the best ways in which this can be attained is by becoming absorbed in the preaching mission of the Lord. Prabhupada one time was explaining how to help our mind be controlled, how to control our mind. And in that particular instant, Prabhupada was explaining how one of the best ways to control our mind is to absorb our mind in the preaching mission of the Lord. We should always remember that the Lord has the mission. The Lord descends in the material world to actually take up the primary mission of life. There is a primary mission. This is one of the basic instructions that we receive when we read these transcendental literatures. The Lord descends in the material world, dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yogi, to re-establish the principle of dharma. And that is everyone's business. That is everyone's primary business, primary purpose. So when people are unaware of this primary duty and responsibility, which is the situation especially in Kali Yuga, people get so entangled in so many, they get distracted in so many different ways. And even ourselves as devotees, if we are not cautious, we may also become derailed, if we're not cautious, because the waves of material nature, the influence of Maya is very, very strong. And even Bhagavad Gita explains, even if one of our senses is not properly controlled, that can distract any practitioner of Krishna consciousness. So we constantly need to be reminded even of these basic instructions. When we read this purport, we are reading and hearing the very early, the preliminary instructions that Lord Krishna is giving to Arjuna. So Prabhupada would say actually Krishna consciousness is very simple. It's simple for the simple, complicated for the complicated. We simply have to be willing to hear, to sincerely hear these instructions given by the Lord and by the acharyas who are representing the mission of the Lord, and if we apply those simple instructions, then we can get the result. Prabhupada was one time explaining in a lecture how it's like investing or saving. If every day you save, let's say 1 rupee, since we're in India, rupee, or in America $1, whatever. So $1, 1 rupee, then after some time you get 2, 3, 5, then you get 100 rupees. And then at that time, you can get the business, Prabhupada would say. When we sufficiently accumulate by nicely applying the process of Krishna consciousness, then we can actually experience. We experience the state of being unaffected or undisturbed. We see this all the time, actually, in devotees. Why is it that devotees have difficulty getting along with one another? It's because these basic this basic knowledge is not properly understood. We are still on the bodily platform. We're still not understanding that so many things happen due to previous karmic activities, or we are reaping the results of our previous karma in so many different ways, or we continue even as devotees by not properly following to create karma, and therefore we fail to properly deal with different situations. That's why it is nicely described by our acharyas. Anyone who's actually cultivating this knowledge, then one should be able to see and to experience what is described by our acharyas. The wonderful, we hear about these wonderful exchanges that are meant to take place between devotees. That can only this is not artificial. It can only take place if we actually apply these basic principles. If we learn to tolerate that, okay, at different times I may not be recognized or honored, and of course a devotee is not at all looking for honor or recognition, and if we do, then that is a defect, that is a misunderstanding. It means we're not properly understanding how we are very, very small in nature. We're not understanding how our situation in the material world is that we are in the material world because of having been sinful. In one lecture, Prabhupada was nicely describing this point, how everyone in the material world is, because the material world is compared to a prison house. So who goes to prison? Not good people, bad people. Criminals. So Prabhupada was making that point. Everyone in the material world is actually a criminal. And he would, in that particular lecture, it was a little bit astonishing. Prabhupada would say that from Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is a criminal because he's in the material world. All the demigods are criminals. We're sitting here as criminals. But we can be reformed, fortunately, by this cultivation of knowledge. So all of us, we have very, we're not aware of this, but we have a long history. We have a long criminal record. People, if they, generally if you want to work for some big company, they will ask so many questions, and one of them will be, do you have any criminal record? So this requires some humility, accepting and acknowledging that actually our position individually is, we are in a fallen condition, isn't it? We have come here in this material world. We have this material body. The very fact that we have this material body is an indication that we have been engaged in sinful activities, that we are criminals. But the great hope is there, again and again, nicely explained in the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, in all the Vedic literatures, that if we simply cultivate this knowledge, if we are serious, one has to become very serious in applying this simple knowledge. Krishna consciousness is actually not complicated. We make it complicated. It is based on very simple knowledge that is accessible to everyone. And if we apply this knowledge, then our whole situation can become changed, transformed, from being in anxiety, from being fearful, to actually being very peaceful and satisfied. Krishna consciousness brings us to that point of being without any kind of anxiety and learning to nicely deal with all kinds of situations and all kinds of people as well. And that is, as described here, the process by which, in just this simple instruction, this one particular verse, and there are so many such verses, we are being reminded, we're being told how to actually become free from all of our miserable conditions. I'll just read the verse again. Anyone, so that should be, that should give hope to everyone, because it means anybody, anyone in any situation, anyone who knows that this material body, made of the 5 gross elements, the sense organs, the working senses, and the mind, is simply supervised by the fixed soul, is eligible to be liberated from material bondage. So therefore Prabhupada would say, where is the difficulty? Where is the difficulty? What's the problem? So, any question? Here's the verse, how to become liberated, free from all material bondage. How to become happy. How to make others happy.
can you explain the soul is the Kutastha?
Yeah, Kutastha.
So, but in Krishna book we see that Krishna also has some like age-wise Pauganda, Yavana and Kishora. He has a different level of the age.
Krishna has different ages, different pastimes in different ages. Yeah.
So then how the soul is Kutastha and fixed?
Your question is how the soul is fixed.
Yeah, he'll explain that the Kutastha is fixed.
Yeah, Krishna, although he is performing these different pastimes in different ages, like you mentioned, Poganda and then Kishora and Komara, he remain in all of these same ages. He is that same personality. He is that same Krishna. So, being the same doesn't mean that one is limited in doing some particular activity. So, these are the soul is fixed. Super soul, also Krishna, is eternally situated in his original nature. So part of that manifestation is through these different leelas that he performs at different ages. So fixed means remaining in our nature, but there is variety, there is diversity, even though we are fixed in our nature. Krishna is eternally, although he comes in the material world, as we have heard many times, it's not that Krishna takes on a material body. The body that he displays or that he shows or manifests is his natural eternal body, but goes through these different leelas. But he's that same personality.
Means nature is same, but there is a different, according to the different situation he can be.
Well, it's just like in our dealings with people, we have, like in a family, there are different, the same personalities are there, but they will have different relationships, isn't it? So a child will relate to his father and mother as someone in a subordinate position. He will have the parental relationship will be there. Different relationship will be there between brothers and sisters, or between husband and wife. So it's the same individuals, but who have who display different relationship based on this whole topic of rasa. Different rasa, different sentiments are expressed, but the same personality. Yeah. So that does not change the fixed nature of Krishna or the fixed nature of the spirit soul. Okay, can close for now. Jai